Sorry, the rain's getting heavier. I'm going to have to get the shots quickly and get away. Yeah, I mean, that's looking pretty much the way I remember the scene. Hi everyone, thanks for joining me again, and welcome to part 2 of my videos about the trip to Cordoba. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, I'll put a link to that up there now, so you can go back and look at that if you want to. Now, you may have noticed that I'm not in Cordoba anymore. I'm back home in the office, and in this video I'm going to do two things. In a little while I'm going to talk you through the complete editing of one of the images from the previous video, and it's this image. But first I wanted to just wrap up the Cordoba trip, because near the end of the previous video I said I'm hoping I might get a chance to do another shoot at some point tomorrow, and I just wanted to let you know basically what happened on that next day. After the actually really lovely conditions yesterday evening at the Punta Romana, or the Roman bridge in the city of Cordoba, in the evening and all through this morning, it absolutely chucked it down with rain. I mean, really hard. We did come out later on in the morning. Our hosts brought us out in the car into the mountains overlooking Cordoba. We stopped in a little village which had a little restaurant in with a raging log fire, very cozy, and some very nice food. And we've just driven up actually to it's an ermita, or a hermitage, up in the mountains, which has got some spectacular views out over the scene. Now, as I said before, this isn't a photo trip, and in particular today I haven't brought all of the photo gear. I've certainly left a tripod at home, or at our host's home anyway, and I'm just going to be shooting handheld. So I've got one idea, fairly wide angle, but it is still raining, so I'm going to have to be quick. Sorry, the rain's getting heavier. I'm going to have to get the shots quickly and get away. I'm not sure how well that worked. It was just getting ready to take some shots and it started chucking it down with rain again. I did manage to fire off a couple of images, one wide angle and one telephoto, which may have worked, may not. Compositionally, the scene wasn't great. There was some beautiful views without a doubt, but sometimes a great view isn't enough to make a good image. But with the heavy clouds and a bit of drama in there, they might work. Now we've driven a bit further down to just kind of an overview point, sort of on a curve on the road on the side of the mountain, again with some pretty spectacular views out here. So I'm thinking maybe a wide angle shot, or fairly wide angle shot, again just looking down using this kind of building here as some foreground, and then hopefully I can get the buildings that are further down, the smaller buildings, to kind of create a pattern leading up, and then got a nice dramatic sky which should look quite nice. So that was it for the next day. Not an ideal way to be doing landscape photography, to be honest. For me, I like to spend a lot of time, I search around, I spend ages looking for compositions, and kind of rushing to get things done while other people are waiting is not the way I'd like to do it. And I think that's reflected in the images. They were quick shots. I still quite like them, I think mostly because of the dramatic conditions. But now to move on to this image. Now, I've shot this composition, or very similar composition, a couple of times before, but this is the first time I've had some really nice light on the scene. So although in the previous video I spent a lot of time searching for an alternative composition, in the end I was actually quite pleased that I stuck to this composition and got the two shots that I did. And this particular one, I just thought it would be interesting to see how I edited it. And it's not a massively complicated or massively long edit. So let's have a look. Okay, so here is the image in Lightroom. It's the raw file straight out of the camera. You can see in the history here, I've done nothing to it at this point. And like most raw files straight out of the camera, it looks pretty flat and uninteresting. But that histogram is good. There's no clipped shadows, there's no blown highlights, and there's lots of data in there. So the first thing I'm going to do is run through a series of corrections for this image. And the first thing I will do is my normal lens corrections, remove chromatic aberration, and enable the profile corrections. Now this was shot fairly wide angle, 26mm, and there's a bit of a lean to some of the buildings and that here, so I'm going to correct that. Into the transform tool, I'm going to use guided. Now I know that relative to the horizon my camera was level, so I'm just going to draw a line right the way across here just to set that position, and then I'm going to draw another line basically down the tower of the mosque here, kind of like that, and that straightened that image up perfectly. So that's two corrections done. The third correction I need to do is related to the fact that this was shot with a 6-stop ND filter, so it's got a very slight colour cast. Now I actually have a preset here, little stopper preset, and if I click on that, actually let's just undo that. If I click on that, you will see what it does is it just changes the white balance very slightly. And I actually wrote an article on how I set up that preset quite a long time ago, and I'll put a link to that article in the description for this video. So that's corrected the colour for the little stopper quite nicely. And I'll just get rid of that left hand panel now to create a bit more space. So now we can get on with some sort of basic updates. And I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to bring the overall exposure down, make the whole image a bit darker, down about there. The highlights are still pretty bright, so I'm going to bring the highlights, probably all the way down. Yeah, all the way down. For now, I can always change it later. And I'm going to bring the shadows, bring it all the way up. Again, for now. I don't think I need to do anything with the whites and the blacks. If I bring the whites up, it's going to make the edge of the bridge look perhaps, might be alright. I'm just going to hold the Alt key down, make sure I'm not clipping anything. Bring the whites up a fraction. Blacks can stay where they are. I'm going to pop in a bit of vibrance about there. And I think with the vibrance added, I'm not so sure about those whites, so let's bring those back a little bit. And then maybe just a touch of saturation. Okay, the sky is lacking a bit of contrast, and I think it just needs the exposure bringing down. So I'm going to use a grad filter, zero it out. I'll just kind of drag a grad filter in, probably not that far down actually. Probably more like about there. Yeah, probably something like about that. And I'm just going to bring the exposure down, darken that sky, probably a fair bit. I mean, it was shot with a 2-stop soft-edged ND grad, but a little bit more darkening won't hurt. About there? No, a little bit more. About there. Now that has actually just darkened things perhaps a little bit more than I wanted around this area here. So within the grad tool, I'm going to select the brush within the grad tool, select erase, make sure my flow is fairly low, Yeah, about 21%, that looks good. And then I'm just going to lightly brush in here, which will remove the effect of that grad filter in the bottom here. And in fact, if I turn the mask on, we can see what that's done. Perhaps a little bit more. And because I've got the flow down low, each pass of the brush isn't doing too much. Yeah, that looks okay. Okay, I think there's a little bit more warmth needed, particularly in the sky, so I'm going to go into the split toning, and I'm just going to leave it actually on the reds, and if I dial the saturation all the way up, you can see the colour that it's going to add to the highlights. But obviously I'm only going to put a little tiny bit in, maybe somewhere around about there. Yeah, I mean that's looking pretty much the way I remember the scene looking when I shot it. So some nice pink tones in there. And then the other thing I want to do is I think I just want to darken the blues in the sky a little bit. So I'm going to go into the HSL, into luminance, and then I'll just take the selector here and have a little look, and that's affecting, yeah, blues and the aquas. So I'm going to bring the blues down a bit, not too much, but a little bit, just to darken it down, yeah, about there. And the aquas, maybe just a fraction, about there. Okay, and then I'm going to crop this 16 by 9. About there, I think. And then put in a little bit of a post-crop vignette just to darken the edges, draw the eye in a bit more. About there. And that basically is the edited image. But now I have a decision to make, and that decision relates to one element in this scene, and it's this crane up here. Now that crane is part of the scene. It's been on that skyline for at least the last 2 years, probably 3, maybe even longer than that, I don't know. But the question is, do I want to leave it in or do I want to take it out? If I want to take it out, this image is going to have to go into Photoshop to take it out. So what do I want to do? If I was planning on trying to use this image, you know, for sale to a magazine or something to show what Cordoba is like, I'd probably leave it in, because otherwise it would be misrepresenting the scene. But that's not what this image is about. This image is about the beauty of the scene. It's about the bridge, it's about the Mesquita. So actually I'm going to take this image into Photoshop and take that crane out. So let's do that now. Photo, edit in Adobe Photoshop CC. Okay, here's my image in Photoshop with all of the adjustments. So I'm going to create a new layer because I don't want to work on the base layer, and then I'm going to zoom in to 100%, and let's see what we can do with this crane. So a lot of it I can probably take out simply by using the spot healing brush. Let's see what we can do with that. Let's just draw that in there. It's going to be more complicated because of the leaves and that around here, so we're going to have to watch out for some of those. But actually I've got rid of most of that simply. Yep, that's pretty much got rid of it. I'm not completely happy with the way these clouds here have kind of changed shape, particularly just here. So I'm going to switch this over from the spot heating brush to the heating brush tool, and I'm going to position it about here. Hold down the Alt or Option key to select, and then just kind of brush in, and it just makes it look a bit more natural in terms of the blend. And I can also see actually over here, I'll go back to the spot heating brush, I've actually got a bit of a mark. I think it was a little water spot on the filter actually rather than on the lens, but I'll take this opportunity to get rid of that as well. And that's it, finished. I'm not going to do anything more with this image. It's done. So I'm going to flatten the image down, and then click close and save, and that will put it back into Lightroom for me. And that is now my finished image. Okay, so that's it, the end of the 2 days in Cordoba, 2 videos. Kind of works. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Maybe you'd like to hit subscribe if you haven't done already, and if you have, then thank you very much, I appreciate that. Likes and shares are always helpful and always very nice to get, and I love to hear from you, so don't forget to put your comments down below. And as always, I appreciate you taking the time to watch my videos, so until the next one, thank you very much, and bye.